Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of DMV Confidential. I'm Kenzie Chase.
And I'm Jenny Gable.
And today we have a brand new episode for you. So the story we want to talk about today, I kind of want to lay out a little bit of a picture. So a man was walking his dog in late January 2023 when he came across a woman's body in Montgomery County. And as investigators looked into the death, they discovered complex dynamics between current and former relationships that led her killer to a breaking point. So the story we want to talk to you guys about today is about the murder of Keylin Chavez-Dominguez.
Yeah, Kenzie. So it was around 2:30 p.m. on January 28th, 2023, when Montgomery County police officers responded to the eastbound intercounty connector.
Which is what you see right here on the screen.
Between New Hampshire Avenue and Columbia Pike in Silver Spring for a suspicious situation. As Kenzie, as you said, a man was walking his dog on a path that kind of runs underneath the intercounty connector when he reported discovering what appeared to be female remains partially concealed by two plastic trash bags.
Yeah, so like as you can see here, this is like looks like a big highway, a big road. And then you can see like the bridge and maybe that's like a trail behind that in the grassy area right there. Maybe that's the trail that they were talking about. But like here's the general vicinity of sort of where they found this body.
Yeah, just kind of a desolate area underneath the roadway there is where she was found.
Yeah, so they look into this and obviously they pronounce the victim. When first responders get to the scene, they pronounce the victim dead. And they were able to identify her as 20-year-old Keylin. And an autopsy report later revealed that she died. They ruled her death a homicide, and they determined that she died by basically a beating and strangulation.
Yeah, it's just overall, I mean, when I first was reading about this case, like imagining the person who's just kind of going about their day, walking in the area to have to discover
and like
something
walking
like
with
that,
their dog, like that's like shocking to me too. Like walking with your dog and then you suddenly come across this, and I wonder if the dog was like sensed it. I assume the dog sensed it like way before.
Yeah, I can't even imagine coming across something like that. It makes you feel for the person, but also, of course, the victim in this situation. But getting into a little bit more about Keylin,
so they actually looked into her as the investigation begins, and they found out that she was living with her ex-boyfriend, Francisco Lara Garcia, at an apartment that they shared in Braxfield Court in Rockville. So they shared this apartment, and we'll kind of get more into like the dynamic between the two, but she was last seen and heard from around December 30th, 2022, around 8:30 p.m., when she sent a text message to her new boyfriend. And they were supposed to meet up the next day, but Keylin never got back to him, and so the new boyfriend sort of grew concerned. And, first he's like asking everybody, like, have you heard from her? Have you seen her? He asks Francisco, have you seen Keylin? He didn't. He says that he didn't see her or hasn't heard from her either. So I think that kind of continues to add on to the concern for him. And they're also asking, like the new boyfriend's asking friends and family, and again, no one has seen or heard from Keylin. So finally, Francisco, with sort of pressure from the family and the boyfriend who are concerned, Francisco finally files a missing persons report on January 2nd, 2023. I don't know why, like, Francisco had to be the one to file the police report was the only thing. I don't know why if the boyfriend or the family was concerned, why they didn't file it.
That's something I was also thinking of as well, but it just sounds like in this situation, it's definitely a lot of questions. Like there's an interesting dynamic going on. Like, as you said, she's, living with her ex-boyfriend, which we'll get into a little bit more, but has this new boyfriend. It sounds like to me, maybe he reached out to Francisco because he knows, like, well, they're roommates. Like he should know where she is.
Yeah, I still don't know why, like, the only reason why I could think of maybe why they would ask Francisco is, like, the fact that investigators are going to go to him first anyway. Like, you're living with her. Have you seen her?
Like, he'd maybe most recently seen her because they're living together.
Yeah.
But getting into kind of more about Keylin and Francisco themselves and kind of their dynamic. They, according to investigators, had actually begun dating around early 2021 before they immigrated to the U.S. from Honduras.
Yeah, so they were dating in Honduras.
Yeah.
Then moved to the United States together, separately. I don't think we know that.
Well, I know that investigators said that the complex that they lived in, Keylin had family living in the same complex. Okay. So it sounds like maybe they all knew each other and then moved here at the same time. And while, living in the U.S., kind of decided to live together since they were a couple. But according to court documents, they were actually still living together and dating when Keylin actually began seeing someone else.
Yeah, and I want to pause there because flash forward to what we know happens to Keylin. Obviously, investigators constantly are looking for like a motive whenever they're looking into homicides. So I mean, they're looking for people that would have a grievance against whoever, and right off the bat, it seems like there was a grievance.
Like there's not a reason, but
a possible motive by the sheer fact that Keylin was still dating Francisco and then started dating someone else at the same time that her and Francisco are living together. Yeah,
it kind of, to them, could paint like there's a reason why he would have some sort of grudge against her.
Yeah, because he does find out and then breaks up with her around October 2022.
Yeah, so Francisco finds out eventually that she is seeing someone else and breaks things off with her. But again, they're still living together. And they actually had another roommate who reported that Francisco was primarily supported by Keylin, that she primarily paid the rent. He told investigators, quote, that Francisco barely worked, and that he noticed that Francisco had become increasingly jealous once Keylin got this new boyfriend as well.
Yeah. So I wonder how that dynamic sort of changed, because Francisco, like you said, was not working, living under the same roof as his now ex-girlfriend, but she's like primarily supporting him. Like it doesn't even say like you said, like the roommate said that he didn't even work. So like she's primarily the one paying the rent, at least according to this roommate. So I'm guessing there's at least 3 people: the roommate, Keylin, and then Francisco. Yeah. But like I wonder like how that dynamic, I wonder what this roommate, like how this roommate was handling this is almost what I'm thinking, like how awkward that must have been. Like
I also wonder what the relation the roommate had to Keylin and Francisco, because I know again
like are they friends or were they just a roommate, like they're just trying to pay their bills?
Because I know the state's attorney's office said, as we mentioned, that Keylin had family living in the same complex, and that they said that Francisco also depended like on her and her family. So we don't know how long Keylin and Francisco knew each other.
Yeah, right.
Before this, and like what the ties are there is interesting.
Yeah, so he's growing increasingly jealous as she gets a new boyfriend. I mean, I wonder how that's working with like them living together. I can't imagine it's a very good situation. The court documents do say that like Keylin would spend primarily time at their shared apartment and also at her new boyfriend's apartment. So she's kind of splitting her time between the two. But still, like, the majority of the time you're living with your ex-boyfriend and your ex-girlfriend and the other way around. But
yeah, and I think that the roommate noted that before Kaylin's disappearance and death that they noticed some tension kind of in the apartment. They said that the last time that they saw Keylin was actually on December 29th, when they saw an argument unfold between her and Francisco, because Keylin said she found an old photo of her and Francisco.
Oh, yeah, this was crazy.
Yeah, I'm guessing from when they were a couple, and the picture appeared to have what looked like a sewing needle kind of stuck through her.
Yeah, we're not going to show that image just because we don't want to put that image out there and have that be an issue for potentially the family seeing that. But it is interesting. It's like a photo of them, Francisco and Keylin, together, looks like what they would still be dating. Mm-hmm. They're like have their arms around each other, and he's taken like 2 sewing needles and sort of like punctured the photo through Keylin, like through her face and like into her body like 2 different times. It's kind of a weird photo. I mean, usually when you hear someone like getting angry, they just like rip the photo in half or something. But like the fact that he took like sewing needles and like punctured it was a little.
It was a weird thing.
Odd.
And I think it's definitely something that was disturbing to the roommate sounds like in this situation, but also Keylin was upset by it, kind of sparked their argument.
And Keylin said, and like I guess Francisco just said like he did that when he was like angry, and I'm like, oh, I don't think you would have done that if you weren't angry, but that was like his justification for it. It was just in a bad moment for him.
Yeah.
So obviously they look through this and they start investigating. Investigators are putting all these pieces together. They're probably having the same exact questions and concerns that you and I are having, Jenny. Like, they're living together. There's this obvious tension. But they start looking through the missing persons investigation, and Francisco is obviously questioned. And he begins providing statements that don't exactly line up for investigators. And they, like, in court documents say that, like, he provided inconsistencies. It just showed that maybe he was lying. Like, he doesn't really know, or he's trying to mislead investigators, or, like, just lying in general.
Yeah, so this was during the point where, again, she was still missing, because there was about 2 or 3 week period between the time when Keylin was reported missing and when she was ultimately found. So, as you said, they spoke to him, but they noticed that there was things that he was saying that were inconsistent, even though he was cooperating and kind of speaking with them.
Right. So then eventually, you know, they're doing all this investigation during the missing persons part of this investigation. Well, now that it's become a homicide investigation, detectives go to Francisco at the apartment and notify him that Keylin was found dead. Well, what does he do? That makes him look super innocent, hint sarcasm. Well, the next day he leaves, and he leaves the state, packs everything, leaves, and then claims he was going to be in Virginia, but he was really moving further down south.
Yeah, and I know investigators noted that they believe he left, like, within an hour of when they left the apartment after notifying him. So they were like, that is very suspicious.
Yeah, you know. They come to the door and say, hey, your ex-girlfriend is dead. And then an hour later, he's booking it south, like...
Yeah.
Tell me that's not suspicious.
Yeah. So I think it's safe to say that throughout this investigation, he's been primary suspect.
Yeah, and I don't know that court documents even cited another suspect. Yeah. So then they're trying to they're concerned that he's basically going to be fleeing the country. So they put out an arrest warrant, and get this, Jenny, for driving without a license.
Yeah, I noticed that, and that stuck out to me.
Yeah, I think it was probably just anything that they could get him on just to get him into questioning. I don't know that, I don't think they had enough to charge him with anything related to Keylin yet, but they could arrest him for driving without a license. So that is enough to get him to stop moving south, or get him to stop leaving the country, right?
I also wonder if it was maybe a way to not spark further, they believed he was already maybe suspicious, to not spark it further, we're arresting you because
to kind of say hey, we're just bringing you in for this reason, so they can kind of get him talking and see if he'll reveal information. That could be an idea too.
Yeah, but so with that, U.S. Marshals arrested him on February 1st in St. Louis, Missouri, and Montgomery County Police actually traveled to Missouri to interview him, where he was read his Miranda rights and things like that, but he did agree ultimately to speak to investigators.
Yeah, and for all this work that he did trying to, what seemed like flee the country, he doesn't really last long under investigators, pressing him, I guess, because he's read his Miranda rights, and then he eventually confesses that he was responsible for the murder. Yeah. So, like I said, he did all this work just to get further south, and then just confesses to investigators. And he was read as a Miranda rights, so he was well aware that, you have the right to remain silent. But I don't know. I always think about that, Jenny, how investigators actually get people to confess, because I don't think anybody, wants to confess to a murder or, any of these crimes. But I always am curious of, how investigators actually do that. Do they really do the good cop, bad cop type of
what
dynamic?
Exactly do they say to him? Do they try to
Do they come off as their pal, hey, I understand, this probably happened, and then they're kind of yeah. I wonder how that process actually works.
You wonder if they'd maybe try to convince them, well, if you tell us, obviously, then there will be maybe lighter
I don't know.
What exactly goes into that process.
I always think about that, because, obviously these people, if they wanted to confess, they would have just come forward, or like when they called it in, they would have just said, I did it. You know, so like these people that don't want to confess, I always wonder what tactics they actually use to get that to get that confession.
Yeah.
I'm always thinking like true crime shows, like, or even like those like cop shows, like How the Good Cop, Bad Cop. That's always what I imagine. But I always think about like what actually happened to like get this to come out. But
yeah, and I also like just going back to a little bit about like the timeline of when they arrested him. You know, they believed he was trying to flee the country, but again, he left that day when they informed him on January 28th, and then just days later, February 1st, in Missouri. So they were able to kind of apprehend him pretty quickly, which I also feel like sometimes in cases like this, you don't see that super often. Just within
see
days.
That quick response, right? Because he really could have left the country before they even charged him with anything. Yeah. So then he admits to this murder, and then he basically kind of like points out, like this is the confession, like he gives sort of the narrative of what he said happened. So according to Francisco, on December 30th, 2022, he was at the apartment alone with Keylin, and she was supposedly listening to music, and I guess he didn't like the music and he wanted to like change whatever they were listening to, and it began an argument.
Yeah, so during that argument, he told investigators that he got so angry with her that he ended up beginning to punch Keylin in the face, and then when she kind of fell to the ground, that's when he straddled her and kind of began strangling her. And you know, when he stopped, he said that she had already passed. Yeah,
she was already dead at that point. So then he has this dead body, and so then there's like, what does he do with it? Well, then he describes that he took her body, put it into 2 trash bags, and then on the next morning, December 31st, 2022, he puts her body in the back seat and sort of drives around in the McLean area of Virginia, looking for like a spot to dispose of her body. So like, I'm sure he was looking at like ditches or like things like that, but none of them seemed like a good enough spot to like hide this crime. So then he basically goes back to the apartment, and then the next day sets out again for like places in Montgomery County. I don't know if it's necessarily the next day, but like he goes back to his apartment.
Maybe he's trying to figure out exactly where else
maybe he's like
go.
Looking up places or something. I have no idea. But then he like sets out again in Montgomery County area looking for like a spot to like dispose of the body.
And something that really I guess stuck out to me when reading kind of this narrative that he painted is he even told investigators that he threw her cell phone out of the car kind of in the area of her new boyfriend's place. So that way, because he said he felt like suspicion was being shifted to him, so that way if they found her phone, they'd be like, well, it's in the area of her new boyfriend's place. It must be him.
Yeah, I thought that was well. And I don't actually know the time frame of that, Jenny. I don't know if he did that before or after he felt the suspicion, because I think he did that while he was disposing the body. So I think that was before he thought the eyes were shifting towards him.
Okay.
But yeah, he like disposes of the phone, like throws it out the window near the new boyfriend's place. And we've seen cases like this where, as far as like cell phone data and tracking cell phone data and sort of pinpointing their last known locations. So I guess from that standpoint, it's not like, it's kind of ingenious about like the idea to even think to do that, but it's also like, you're like trying to pin it on someone else.
Yeah.
On this new boyfriend, and we know that he's like jealous, that he's been jealous.
Yeah, I think it just kind of shows, again, going back to if like hearing that this narrative that he painted about each step that he took, that, you know, he killed Keylin, but then afterwards very kind of meticulous in the way that he thought about, okay, now exactly where.
Yeah, I agree.
So that's definitely disturbing.
He makes it sound like the actual murder itself just kind of happened. Yeah. But then he had like a clear plan of what to do after.
Yeah.
After he murdered her.
Like, this was my idea on how to shift suspicion. This is, you know.
Yeah. And at one point, like, he even like tosses his own phone. And I believe this is actually while he's like trying to flee the country. And he tells investigators that I believe the reason why he like what he told investigators why he left is he said like he felt suspicion shift towards him, and he was worried because the victim's family, so Kaylin's family, he was worried about what Kaylin's family would tell police.
Yeah, I think he said that he was worried that he felt like her family thought that it was him, and they had suspicions that it was him. So
yeah, so what does he do? He leaves, which just makes him look more suspicious, but
yeah,
I think he was trying to make it seem like, oh, he just left because the family was looking at me, and so I just wanted to like save myself, and like, but I didn't do it originally, is what he was saying. And obviously, he ends up confessing.
Yeah, and I think another thing also that I remember reading is that when he decided on the area of the intercounty connector, he kind of described that he dumped her body over the overpass area, and then he continued on his way to Philadelphia for New Year's Eve.
So like, yeah, he just like says that he dumped this body and then just like continued traveling for his New Year's Eve plans.
Like, this is somebody that he obviously dated for a while, had a connection with, you know, knew her and her family. So again, any case of murder is horrible, but this is somebody he was close to just be able to kind of do that and then go off to celebrate.
And then he just went off to for New Year's Eve. I kind of want to like, I'm assuming this is like a party. So like, I want to see if like any of those people at the party, like if they notice anything, or was he just like happy-go-lucky, acting completely normal? Like, this didn't just happen. Like, he didn't just dispose of his ex-girlfriend's body over the bridge and then just kept going.
Because to be able to do that in general is obviously a horrible thing, but this is somebody that he had a connection with, obviously a deep connection with for a long time.
And I think what you said is very, like, true. The fact that he went to, like, a celebration right after doing this, like, it was nothing. Like,
yeah, like, no, I mean, we don't know exactly what he was feeling, but it almost appears like no disgust or, like, regret there. You just kind of go off to
like,
day as usual. The holiday. Yeah.
Yeah. It's baffling to me. But, yeah, when he was heading south, he, like, threw away his own phone, too, to, like, because he knew that it could be tracked. So, like, he's putting a lot of thought into some of these other areas that it's kind of interesting that he's saying, like, oh, this just happened because she was listening to a song and I wanted to change it.
Again,
like, it seems like this was, like, boiling up. Like, the fact that she was, like, had some infidelity. Like, the fact that started and then, you know, he relied on her. Now she's, like, with this new boyfriend. How does that impact him as far as, like, getting everything paid for and all that stuff, like, being taken care of?
Yeah, combined with that and the argument, again, that the roommate said they had just days, maybe a day before, just days before.
We know he has some, like, anger issues. Yeah. We know that he has, like, while they were dating, like, taken needles and, like, poked holes in, like, a photo of her. So, like, it was, like, all of this that was, like, kind of boiling up to this breaking point that...
Yeah. I think because, you know, when I heard, they argued because of the music, like the music she was listening to. But I think then when you, like, look deeper at, you know, what investigators are saying about their dynamic, you can see that it kind of is like a bunch of things combined, and maybe this just set off an anger spell. Like,
I don't know, but it does concern me, the fact of how much he put after it, like trying to throw off investigators and then fleeing. And he was actually planning to flee all the way back to Honduras. Yeah. So he wasn't even planning to, like, leave the state. He was, like, planning to, like, go all the way back to his home country.
Yeah. So investigators were definitely on point with that when they thought that he was trying to flee. Yeah. Trying to flee there, so...
Yeah. So, well, then he eventually does plead guilty in March to first-degree murder. Mm-hmm. Jenny and I were talking about this, but I thought this was interesting, too, because usually when you hear about a plea deal, they plead guilty to, like, a lesser charge. Like second-degree murder or, like, involuntary manslaughter. I don't think he was going to get that, but, like, usually when you plead guilty, you don't plead guilty to, like, the charge that you were...
You don't usually see that.
Given,
no.
Yeah.
So that was also something, you know, you wonder about kind of what he felt they, like, had against him. He felt like maybe he didn't have any chance.
I mean, he confessed.
Yeah,
so, like,
yeah.
He confessed. Yeah. I mean, investigators legitimately got him saying word by word, like, this is how I did it. This is how I cleaned it up.
That might really have left no room for him to plead
but
otherwise.
even still, like, to plead guilty, like, to not even go to, even if you, like, have the full thing, I wonder if how drastic his sentencing difference would have been. But it doesn't sound like it was that drastic of a sentencing thing, right? Because
he was actually, his sentencing hearing was held pretty recently, actually, November 14th of this year, and he was actually sentenced to life in prison, but got all of that but 40 years suspended, and then 5 years of probation upon when he's released.
Yeah, so I wonder if maybe that's why, like, maybe he was going to face complete life in prison, but because he pleaded guilty, he was able to get, like, a suspended sentence and only serve 40 years, which is still a really long time. Anyway, I'm just listening to, like, him pleading guilty to first-degree murder, and I have...
That is a lot of questions are kind of raised there.
Yeah.
But again, he will, I mean, I believe he's in his 30s of 40 years in prison, you know. He'll be probably in his 70s when he's finally released.
And then he still has those probation, So I think all of that, I mean, I know we covered a lot about this, but again, I just want to, like, reiterate the fact that Keylin was, like, murdered in a brutal way. And regardless how you might have felt about some of her, like, indiscretions, like, regardless how you might have felt about their relationship or things like that, she was 20 years old. I mean, she,
such
like,
a young person. Yeah,
she had, like, barely left the teenage phase of her life. And she was brutally murdered by, like, a man she was, like, supporting even.
Yeah.
That she had moved here from a different country with.
Yeah.
And so I always want to, like, reiterate the fact that, like, this is a real person we're talking about, and no one deserves that. No one deserves to be murdered the way that Keylin was murdered.
I think it kind of goes back to Kenzie that, like, no matter what she may or may not have done, whether or not she cheated on Francisco or not, you know, as you said, she was a young woman, had her whole life ahead of her, just, you know, come to the U.S., and nobody deserves that. No family deserves to have a loved one experience something like that. So it's just heartbreaking.
So I know that was a lot, but if you guys want to continue listening to more shows like this, more episodes like this, we encourage you to tune in and keep following us on this show and also on our website, dcnewsnow.com, and we will see you next time.